Think this is strange? Believe me, you haven't seen anything yet. Meet the most incredible circus performers ever. Edward Mordrake's story is one of the strangest and most unsettling ever told. He was a nobleman, young, intelligent, and well-educated, but he carried something that set him apart from everyone else: a second face on the back of his head. Unlike a normal face, this one couldn't eat or speak properly, but according to those who saw him, it could smile and even whisper. It was a presence he could never escape, a nightmare that lived with him every moment of his life. He was said to be a kind and sensitive man, but his unwanted twin was the opposite. It would twist its lips into a sneer when Edward was happy and grin whenever he was crying. At night, as he tried to sleep, he could feel it moving, murmuring things he could never repeat. He claimed it spoke of evil, dark things no person should ever know. It never rested, and neither could he. He sought out doctors, begging them to remove it. He didn't care about scars or pain, he just wanted it gone. But in those days, such an operation was impossible. No one could help him. With no escape from his torment, he shut himself away, refusing to see anyone, fearing that his twin would one day take over his body entirely. His story spread, shocking everyone who heard it. Some said he was cursed, others believed he was an unnatural medical phenomenon. Whether every detail was true or not, one fact remains. Edward Mordrake lived and died with a face that was never truly his, a silent watcher that haunted him to his final day. Some performers shocked the world with their unusual strength or rare conditions, but others had a presence so eerie, they seemed like something out of a storybook. Grady Stiles was one of those people. His hands and feet were unlike anything most had ever seen. His fingers were fused together in large, claw-like shapes, giving him an appearance that earned him the nickname Lobster Boy. But he wasn't just a curiosity, he was a man with an unsettling past. Born into a family where this condition, ectrodactyly, had been passed down for generations, Grady was put on display from childhood. His arms were powerful, making up for his lack of normal hands, and his grip was something few wanted to test. Despite his inability to walk without assistance, he didn't let his condition hold him back. When people underestimated him, they quickly learned their mistake. His strength was surprising, his presence commanding, and those who met him never forgot it. But there was something about Grady that went beyond just his physical appearance. His life outside the circus world was filled with darkness. He wasn't just famous for his condition, he was infamous for his temper. Those close to him learned that his powerful arms weren't just for performing. His life became a whirlwind of fame, fear, and tragedy, making him one of the most controversial figures to ever step into the spotlight. And yet, for all his notoriety, he wasn't the only one with a body that defied expectations. Some performers had features that were so rare, even science struggled to explain them. If Grady Stiles had hands that resembled something from another world, Liu Chung had eyes that seemed to belong to another species. At first glance, he looked like an ordinary man, but those who got close enough to stare into his eyes quickly realized there was something unusual about them. Each of them contained two pupils. It was a sight that left people stunned, unable to look away. Double pupils in one eye. An impossibility to most, yet Liu Chung lived with it. Some claimed it was a rare medical condition, others believed it was an illusion, a trick of the light, but those who met him swore it was real. His gaze was hypnotic, almost unnatural, and it made him a spectacle wherever he went. The way light reflected in his eyes gave the impression that they were constantly shifting, making him seem as if he were seeing things no one else could. Unlike many performers whose talents came from physical skill or strength, Liu Chung's presence alone was enough to unsettle people. His eyes made him stand out in ways no costume or act ever could. Some believed his condition gave him enhanced vision, as if he could see more of the world than the average person. Others whispered that his second pupils gave him insight beyond the physical realm. Whether it was medical fact or something stranger, one thing was certain: his eyes were unforgettable. And yet, he wasn't the only man with a talent that made people question reality. Some had abilities so bizarre they seemed impossible. One man, in particular, had a trick that defied human anatomy itself. Some performers drew attention with their height, their muscles, or their unusual features. Martin Lorello didn't need any of that. He had something that no one else could do. With a slow, almost eerie motion, he could turn his head a full 180 degrees, twisting it completely backward without moving his shoulders. Audiences didn't believe it until they saw it with their own eyes, and when they did, they could only stare in shock. Nicknamed the Human Owl, Lorello had a talent that seemed more fitting for a bird than a man. While others bent their bodies in incredible ways, he had perfected a movement that defied logic. His head would rotate smoothly, his spine bending in a way that shouldn't have been possible. And then, as if nothing had happened, he would turn it back, flashing a confident grin as if to say, "What's the big deal?" His act became famous, but few knew the effort it took to pull it off. He had spent years training his neck muscles, slowly stretching them beyond what seemed humanly possible. He would sometimes add humor to his performances, acting like a mechanical doll, or a creature from another world. No matter how many times he performed, the effect was always the same: gasps, stunned silence, then wild applause. But for all his incredible flexibility, some performers didn't just move their bodies in strange ways. Some carried extra limbs, extra weight, or even in the most bizarre cases, an extra body. Some people go through life carrying burdens no one else can see. Jean Libera carried his in plain sight. Attached to his torso was a second undeveloped body, a parasitic twin. It had arms, legs, even a small lifeless head. It didn't move, didn't speak, but it was there, fused to him from birth, making him one of the rarest cases in medical history. He could have hidden away, but instead, he stepped into the spotlight. People paid to see him, drawn in by curiosity and disbelief. He would lift his shirt, revealing the small, motionless limbs clinging to his body. It was something that doctors struggled to explain, a condition so rare that few had ever seen anything like it. Unlike conjoined twins, his twin had no life of its own. It was entirely dependent on his body, an extra weight that he carried everywhere. Yet Jean didn't see himself as a victim. He embraced his uniqueness, turning it into a career that allowed him to travel and perform. He wasn't just a man with a medical anomaly, he was a showman. He understood that people stared, that they whispered, that they tried to make sense of what they were seeing. And he let them. His presence was proof of nature's strangest possibilities. Some performers amazed the world with what they could do, others amazed the world simply by existing. And then there were those whose very appearance seemed impossible, as if they had stepped straight out of a nightmare. If Jean Libera carried extra weight, Peter Robinson carried almost nothing at all. He was known as the living skeleton, and for good reason. His body was so thin, so lacking in muscle and fat, that he looked like a walking collection of bones. People who saw him up close struggled to believe he was real. His ribs, his spine, his limbs, every bone was visible beneath his skin, as if his body had forgotten how to hold on to flesh. Unlike most circus performers, he didn't need to do anything to shock an audience. He would simply step onto the stage, stand in the spotlight, and let people take in the sight of him. He wasn't sick, at least not in the way people expected. He ate, he moved, he lived his life like anyone else. But no matter what he did, he never gained weight. He was a mystery that doctors couldn't solve, a man whose very existence seemed to defy the rules of human biology. His career took him around the world, where audiences marveled at his skeletal frame. He would sometimes stand beside strong men, the contrast making him look even smaller. Other times he would pose in elegant clothes, turning his thinness into a statement of style rather than a condition. No matter how he presented himself, one thing was clear: he was unforgettable. Some circus acts relied on skill, some on illusion, and some, like Peter Robinson, on the sheer fact that they were unlike anyone else. Some performers stood out because they were larger than life. Lucia Zarate stood out because she was the smallest adult to ever walk the earth. She was so tiny, so delicate, that she could fit in the palm of a man's hand. Her body remained childlike for her entire life, and people could hardly believe she was fully grown. Her condition, a rare form of dwarfism, meant that while she aged like anyone else, her bones and muscles never developed past infancy. She weighed less than a newborn, yet she was lively, intelligent, and full of energy. People expected her to be fragile, but she could move with surprising speed and agility. She danced, laughed, and played, charming audiences with her tiny frame and bright personality. She traveled the world, fascinating crowds who had never seen a living person so small. Next to ordinary people, she looked unreal, like a porcelain doll that had somehow come to life. People marveled at her ability to interact like anyone else, despite her miniature size. But life as a performer wasn't always easy. The world was fascinated by those who looked different, but it wasn't always kind. Some, like Lucia, embraced their uniqueness with joy. Others carried their differences with pain, forever battling the way people saw them. No one understood that more than a man whose appearance was so extreme, he became known as the Elephant Man. Some circus performers were famous for their skills, but Joseph Merrick was famous for his face. His skin was thick, rough, and uneven, his head grew far larger than normal, and his body was twisted with bone deformities. People stared, gasped, and whispered when they saw him. His face, his hands, his legs, every part of him was affected by a condition no one at the time could explain. He didn't just look different, he moved differently. His swollen limbs made walking difficult, his oversized head made balance a struggle, and his speech was hard to understand. Yet behind the face that shocked the world, there was a man of remarkable intelligence. He was thoughtful, kind, and deeply aware of how others saw him. For years he was put on display, treated as an oddity rather than a person. People paid money just to look at him, their eyes filled with both fascination and horror. But he was more than a spectacle. Those who took the time to speak with him quickly realized he was gentle, educated, and far more than his appearance suggested. His life was tragic, but it also changed the way the world saw those with extreme conditions. Some performers shocked audiences with their size, their strength, or their skills. Others, like Joseph Merrick, made people question their own understanding of beauty and humanity. But some acts went beyond physical appearance. Some performers pushed the limits of what the human body could endure, stepping into territory that seemed almost supernatural. Most people fear the pain of a single needle piercing their skin. Mirandajo allowed swords, daggers, and sharp rods to pass straight through his body, and he didn't just endure it, he seemed completely unaffected. His skin, his muscles, even his organs should have screamed in agony, yet he remained calm, as if nothing had happened at all. Crowds watched in disbelief as long, gleaming steel was pushed through his abdomen, emerging from his back with no sign of injury. There was no blood, no pain, no flinching. People thought it was a trick, but doctors examined him, x-rayed him, and even tested him under medical supervision. There was no illusion. The weapons went through him, yet he lived. How was it possible? Some believed he had unlocked some secret of the human body, a way to control pain or even heal instantly. Others whispered that he was something beyond human, a man whose body had been altered by forces no one could understand. Whatever the truth, Mirandajo left audiences speechless. Unlike other circus performers who relied on talent or appearance, he made people question the very limits of what a human body could survive. And he wasn't the only one to leave crowds wondering if what they were seeing was even real. Some circus performers shocked audiences with incredible strength. Others performed impossible feats of endurance. And then there were those like Alice E. Doherty, whose appearance alone was enough to leave people speechless. She was known as the Minnesota Woolly Girl, and for good reason. Her entire face and body were covered in a thick golden blonde coat of hair. Unlike many circus performers, Alice wasn't a sideshow curiosity by choice. She was born with hypertrichosis, a condition so rare that doctors could hardly believe what they were seeing. From infancy, her soft wool-like hair grew longer and thicker, covering nearly every inch of her skin except for the palms of her hands and the soles of her feet. It was a condition seen only a handful of times in recorded history, and in the world of traveling shows, that made her a star. Her golden fur gave her a strangely ethereal look, like a figure from a fairy tale brought to life. But while audiences were fascinated by her, Alice herself remained quiet, shy, and reserved. She wasn't like many other performers who reveled in the spotlight. Instead, she was put on display from a young age, traveling from city to city while people marveled at her unique features. Unlike some of the more theatrical circus stars, Alice didn't need to perform tricks or tell stories to draw a crowd. All she had to do was walk onto a stage. She was living proof of how unpredictable nature could be. Her condition was never fully understood, and her life remains a mystery in many ways. But one thing was certain, no one who saw Alice Doherty ever forgot the girl with the golden wool. Some performers defied the odds simply by surviving. Carl Unthon didn't just survive, he thrived. Born without arms, he refused to let his condition define him. He didn't want pity, and he certainly didn't want to be treated as anything less than capable. Instead, he turned his disability into a skill that left audiences stunned. From a young age, Carl adapted in ways few could imagine. He trained his feet to replace his hands, developing precise control over his toes. He could write, eat, and even play the violin, all with his feet. People doubted him until they saw it for themselves. On stage, he would lift a bow between his toes, place a violin against his shoulder, and begin to play. The music was flawless. His performance wasn't just impressive, it was unbelievable. Unlike many sideshow acts, Carl wasn't content to be a spectacle. He demanded respect, proving he could do things most people never could, even with all their limbs. He traveled the world, performing not as a curiosity, but as a true musician. He wasn't just a performer, he was an artist. His story wasn't one of tragedy, but of triumph. He turned what others saw as a limitation into a talent that brought him fame. He forced people to rethink what was possible, proving that determination could overcome even the greatest obstacles. But while Carl's abilities came from relentless practice, other performers took control of their bodies in a different way. Some transformed themselves into living works of art. When Captain Constantinus stepped onto the stage, people didn't know where to look. Every inch of his body, his arms, his chest, even his face, was covered in tattoos. In a time when tattoos were rare and considered shocking, he looked like something out of legend. His story was just as wild as his appearance. According to him, he had once been a prince, captured by enemies who forced him to endure a painful ritual. Over 300 intricate tattoos were etched into his skin using primitive tools, marking him forever. Some believed the story, others thought it was just an elaborate tale designed to make his act more thrilling. But one thing was certain, his body was a masterpiece of ink, unlike anything most people had ever seen. The symbols covering him seemed almost mystical, a collection of designs that held unknown meanings. People leaned in, trying to make sense of the patterns, wondering what secrets they might hold. His presence alone was enough to spark endless fascination. He was more than a performer. He was a walking work of art, decades ahead of his time. Long before tattoo culture became mainstream, Constantinus turned his body into something unforgettable. Some performers amazed with their talents, others with their appearance. And then, there were those whose strength was so legendary, it didn't seem humanly possible. Some circus performers relied on illusion, making the impossible look real. Louis Cyr didn't need tricks. His strength was real, and it was unmatched. He was a giant of a man, his muscles packed with raw, unthinkable power. No one could match him in sheer strength. He lifted more than any man before him, pulling off feats that seemed physically impossible. He once carried over 4,000 pounds on his back. He held heavyweights with one finger. He stopped horses in their tracks with his bare hands. His body wasn't just big, it was built for power. People challenged him, thinking the stories were exaggerated. Every time he proved them wrong. He didn't just beat strongmen, he crushed them. No weight was too heavy, no challenge too great. He didn't need to show off or talk big. He simply walked onto the stage, lifted something that should have been impossible, and left the audience in awe. Louis Cyr wasn't just a performer, he was a legend. His name became synonymous with strength, his record standing for years, some even lasting to this day. While many circus acts relied on skill, illusion, or endurance, Louis showed that sometimes raw, unstoppable power was enough to leave the world speechless. Some performers amazed crowds with their towering height or immense strength. Eli Bowen had neither. In fact, he had no legs at all. But what he lacked in limbs, he more than made up for in agility. While others relied on sheer power, Eli's body was built for precision, balance, and flexibility. The moment he stepped into the ring, people forgot what they were supposed to expect from a man with no legs. He needs crutches or a wheelchair. Instead, he developed a strength in his arms that allowed him to move faster, climb higher, and balance better than most men with full use of their legs. He performed breathtaking acrobatics, flipping and tumbling with effortless grace. His act was nothing short of spectacular. He would leap, twist, and climb, performing daring stunts on parallel bars, ropes, and ladders. He had the grip of a champion gymnast and the upper body control of a professional athlete. People came expecting to see a man with a disability. Instead, they watched in awe as he moved with a level of skill most could never dream of achieving. Eli Bowen didn't just prove he was capable, he proved he was better. He shattered expectations and forced audiences to rethink what the human body could do. Some performers made their mark through sheer power. Others, like Eli, left crowds stunned with their control and finesse. But not every performer needed athletic skill or superhuman strength to shock an audience. Sometimes all it took was a single glance. Some circus acts relied on daring stunts, while others left people in awe with their sheer presence. Popeye Perry didn't need to move a muscle to get a reaction. His eyes did all the work. With a simple flick of his facial muscles, his eyeballs would push forward, bulging out of their sockets in a way that seemed impossible. It wasn't an illusion or a trick of lighting. His eyes actually popped forward, creating a look that sent shivers down the spines of anyone watching. People winced as they watched, unable to believe what they were seeing. His eyes stretched further and further as if they might fall out completely. He would hold them in place for an uncomfortably long time before casually blinking and letting them slip back into place. Some thought it must have been painful, but Perry seemed completely unaffected. He would smile, his bulging eyes staring into the crowd, making it feel as though he could see into another dimension. His act was simple, but its effect was unforgettable. People who saw him perform never forgot the man whose eyes seemed ready to leap from his face. It was a talent that defied explanation, something so strange and unnatural that it almost didn't seem real. Most people can't function without a good night's sleep. Al Herpin never had that problem because he never slept at all. No naps, no dozing off, no moments of rest. He simply stayed awake night after night without ever showing signs of exhaustion. It wasn't a stunt or an endurance challenge, it was just how his body worked. Doctors were baffled. Every human needs sleep to survive, or so they thought. Al Herpin proved them wrong. He claimed that from childhood he had never once fallen asleep, and yet, he was perfectly fine. He never complained of fatigue, never yawned, never seemed even slightly drowsy. He carried on with life as if the rules of biology didn't apply to him. People speculated about how he managed it. Some believed he had an unusual brain condition that allowed his body to function without rest. Others thought it was an exaggeration, but no one ever caught him sleeping. He remained wide-eyed at all hours, carrying out his daily tasks like any other person, except for the fact that his day never ended. Al Herpin wasn't a strong man or a daredevil, yet his existence alone defied everything people thought they knew. He didn't need to perform high-risk stunts or manipulate his body into unnatural shapes. He was simply living proof that the human body is capable of the impossible. That's about it. Write in the comments which of these people impressed you the most. For more useful information, watch other videos.